The Democrats knew that they didn't have the votes on this voting rights law. They knew that they were going to lose, but they decided to make the play anyway, to, in a sense, call the roll, have the vote. And it went down, well, kind of just the way it was expected to go down. The Democrats lost. Voting rights bill is dead for now, dead for this session. Went down 52 to 48. Sure enough, Manchin and Sinema voted with all 50 Republicans. And that was that. So before the vote, there was a sort of last-ditch desperate attempt to try to arm twist or even pressure Manchin and Sinema. Here's a classic statement by Pramila Jayapal, quote, "If you don't think Mitch McConnell will get rid of the filibuster to push through his right-wing agenda, you haven't been paying attention." Actually, if you've been paying attention, you'd realize that Mitch McConnell had the opportunity to get rid of the filibuster. This was in the Trump years, and he didn't do it. In fact, he refused to do it. 37 Democratic senators demanded that he preserve the filibuster. Look at the hypocrisy of that. It's Mitch McConnell who's been consistent. He supported the filibuster all along. And I was reading this quote to Debbie this morning, and Debbie's laughing, and she goes, "Listen, what is Pramila Jayapal worried about?" She goes, quote, "Our guys don't know how to play hardball like they do. We never do it. We're not as evil and cunning as they are." And then, of course, both of us said, well, maybe we should be. Maybe we could use one or two guys who are sort of snakes like Pelosi and Schumer. Where are snakes? You know, we seem to have all these kind of deer that play by the rules. But in this case, the good guys won, and it's very good. All the rhetoric about, you're a segregationist, you're George Wallace, you're Jim Crow, you're trying to, you're allying yourself with Bull Connor. All of this stuff didn't go anywhere. Kristen Sinema, by the way, gave a kind of a tearful speech in which she said, and I think this really reflects her heartfelt conviction, quote, "We have but one democracy. We can only survive, we can only keep it if we do so together." Now, I'm tempted to cheer this, but I think at the same time, a little critical reflection shows, is this really a naive hope? Is the left right that this notion of being able to kind of get back together, put Humpty Dumpty back, is that a realistic hope? Well, clearly Sinema is expecting that. What I fear, however, is that there's been enough of a sort of secession of the American mind in which each side really thinks the other side is pulling down the guardrails. Each side thinks that the other side has sort of gone rogue, is not respecting the rules and parameters of basic constitutional democracy. And you have to go back really, I think, to the 1850s to see this kind of mutual recrimination. Now, in reality, I think it's pretty obvious that one side, not both sides, but one side, is in fact pulling down the guardrails. Ask yourself this. What guardrails have Republicans pulled down? People say, Republicans are trying to prevent important changes to voting rights. Well, let's think about it. Republicans are trying to have the same voting rights that we had when Obama was elected, when Obama was reelected, when Clinton was elected, when Clinton was reelected. So are you saying that America was a segregationist society in the 1990s? In 2008, in 2012? Obviously not. So it's the Democrats that have become radicalized, and they are seeing normal American politics of just a few years ago as somehow akin to the bad old days of the 1920s and 30s, if not the 1820s and 1830s. Now, Manchin, who's a different guy than Sinema, gave a very interesting speech where he quoted James Madison, who said, quote, "The purpose of the Senate was to protect the people against their rulers, and secondly, to protect the people against the transient impressions into which they themselves may be led." These are quite profound statements, and I want to parse them out a little bit. Protect the people against their rulers. So the idea here is that you're protecting the people, the general welfare of the society, even against the elected representatives of those same people. There's no reason to believe that the representatives chosen by the people will always have fidelity to those people. And so, isn't it remarkable that here, the Democrats assume, well, these people are elected, this is democracy in action. Well, Madison realized that it's not so simple. Human motives are corrupt enough that you got to protect the people from their own chosen leaders. And second, to protect the people against the transient impressions into which they themselves may be led. Wow! Protect the people from themselves. The idea here is that democracy is a reflection of the considered judgment of the people, of people in their thoughtful mode, in the people after they've sort of had a conversation. Democracy is not mob rule. And even if the people themselves say, let's go get that guy, let's throw out this rule, the people may be hot-headed, they may be short-sighted. They have to be protected from their own hot-headedness, their own short-sightedness. So this Manchin, it seems, is doing some real thinking, quite apart from, obviously he's representing his own constituency. He's representing conservatives in a state that Trump won decisively. But I think more important than that, he's doing the statesman-like task of examining not just the history of the filibuster, but the reason for the filibuster. And this is why these two guys, Manchin and Sinema, despite enormous pressure, you got to have some respect for their political courage. It's actually rare it's rare to see these days. And they exercised it, they delivered the goods. And as a result, this corrupt voting rights scheme to federalize elections and give Democrats a permanent advantage is now exactly where it belongs, in the grave.